Okay, so picture this. You get a raise at work. 3%. Your boss shakes your hand, tells you you're doing great, and you walk out of that office feeling good. Finally, a little breathing room. Except, 6 months later, you're somehow more broke than you were before the raise. Groceries cost more. Gas costs more. Your rent went up. That coffee you used to grab without thinking twice now makes you pause for half a second before you order it. And you start wondering, wait, didn't I just get a raise? Where did the money go? Here's the thing. Nobody stole your money. Not exactly. But something did take it. Quietly. Legally. And it's been doing this to basically every person alive for your entire life, and almost nobody talks about it by its real name. It's called inflation. But I want you to stop thinking of it as some boring economics word you half remember from a textbook. I want you to start thinking of it the way it actually behaves, which is as a tax. An invisible one. One that never shows up on your paycheck, never gets voted on by name, and never sends you a bill. It just sits there in the background, taking a bite out of everything you earn every single year, whether you notice it or not. And look, I'm not here to scare you for the sake of scaring you. I'm here because most people are financially bleeding out from a wound they don't even know exists. So let's actually look at it. Let's start with a number that should genuinely bother you. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the US dollar has lost roughly 87% of its purchasing power since 1970. Let that sit for a second. 87%. That means something that cost you $1 in 1970 costs you around $7 or $8 today. Not because the product changed, because the dollar shrank. Now here's where it gets personal. Real wage growth, meaning what you actually earn after you adjust for inflation, has barely moved for the average American worker over the last several decades. You're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up, and every year you have to run a little faster just to stay in the same spot. Some years, you don't even manage that. You just fall behind, and you don't feel it happen because it happens in tiny, boring increments. 2% here, 3% there. Never enough in one moment to make headlines in your own life, but enough over 10, 20, 30 years to quietly erase a huge chunk of your life's work. I want you to think of inflation like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice a slow leak day to day. Your tire looks fine in the morning. It looks fine that afternoon. But if you never check the pressure, one day you're driving down the highway and the thing just gives out on you. And you have no idea how you got there because you were never watching the one number that mattered. Your paycheck is that tire. And most people are checking everything except the pressure. So let's get specific because vague fear doesn't help anybody. Let's talk about what this actually looks like in your life right now in the numbers you're already living with. Say you make $60,000 a year. Feels like a reasonably comfortable number, right? Now let's say inflation runs at an average of 3.5% a year, which honestly is close to the historical US average going back decades. Sometimes lower, sometimes way higher like we saw in 2022 when it spiked over 9% at its peak. At 3.5% a year, in 10 years, you need to be earning around $85,000 just to have the same purchasing power you have today. Same lifestyle. Same groceries. Same rent. Not a better life. The exact same life, just costing you $25,000 more a year to maintain. If your raises aren't outpacing that number, you're not actually getting richer. You're just running faster on the same treadmill, and the treadmill is winning. Now here's the part that made me genuinely frustrated when I first understood it. Inflation doesn't hit everyone equally. It's not some neutral force of nature. It hits the people with the least cushion the hardest. If you're wealthy, you likely have assets. Real estate, stocks, businesses. Those assets tend to rise in value roughly in line with or even above inflation over time. So wealthy people don't just survive inflation. In a lot of cases, they actually benefit from it because the value of their debt shrinks in real terms while the value of their assets climbs. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck with your money sitting in a checking account earning basically nothing, or worse, sitting in cash under your mattress because you don't trust the markets, inflation is eating you alive with zero mercy. Every dollar you're not investing is a dollar guaranteed to be worth less next year. Guaranteed. Not a risk. A certainty. That's the cruel part nobody tells you. Playing it safe by keeping your money in cash isn't actually safe. It just feels safe because the loss doesn't show up as a scary red number crashing on a screen. It shows up quietly, as your grocery bill creeping up, as your rent renewal letter, as the sinking feeling that your paycheck buys less than it used to. Cash under your mattress isn't neutral. It's a slowly deflating balloon. Let's talk about groceries for a second, because this is where people actually feel it, even if they don't connect it back to the bigger picture. According to data tracked by the USDA, grocery prices have risen dramatically over the last several years, with cumulative increases well above 20% in some categories since 2020 alone. Eggs, meat, basic staples. Things you can't really opt out of buying. This isn't people spending more because they want nicer things. This is the exact same shopping cart costing meaningfully more money than it did a few years ago. That's the tax. That's what it looks like when it shows up at the checkout line instead of on a government form. And housing, don't even get me started on housing. Rent has outpaced wage growth in the vast majority of major U.S. metro areas over the last 2 decades. So even the roof over your head, arguably the most basic need a human has become a battleground against this invisible tax. People aren't imagining that things feel harder than they used to. The numbers back it up. So why doesn't anyone call this what it is? Why do we call it inflation, this soft, almost scientific-sounding word, instead of what it functionally behaves like, which is a tax on literally everyone who holds cash and doesn't do anything about it? Here's my theory, and you can disagree with me, but I think it's because a tax you vote on feels like something you have control over. Inflation feels like weather, like something that just happens to you. And when something feels like weather, people don't fight back against it. They just complain about it and move on. That passivity is exactly why so many people stay stuck. But here's the good news, and this is the part one actually want you to walk away with. Because I'm not here to just depress you for 12 minutes and leave you hanging. Inflation is beatable. Not avoidable. Nobody avoids it entirely, but beatable. And the way you beat it isn't complicated. It's just uncomfortable for people to actually start doing. The first thing you have to accept is that cash sitting still is not neutral. It's a loss. If your money isn't earning a return that's at or above the inflation rate, you're losing money every single day. You just don't see it happen because there's no red number flashing at you. So step one, mentally, is treating idle cash the same way you treat a leaking pipe. You wouldn't just let a pipe leak for 10 years because it's not actively hurting today. You'd fix it. Same logic applies here. Step two is understanding that historically, the stock market has returned an average of around 7% a year after adjusting for inflation, going back nearly a century. That doesn't mean every year. Some years it's negative, some years it's spectacular, but averaged out over long periods, it has reliably outpaced inflation in a way that a savings account simply hasn't. This is why so many financially secure people aren't necessarily people with massive incomes. They're people who put their money into assets early and let time do the heavy lifting. Step three, and this is the one people skip because it feels less exciting, is you actually have to look at where your money goes. And ask, is this thing I'm buying an asset, or is it just cash leaving my hands to sit in someone else's pocket? Not to say don't ever spend money. Life isn't a spreadsheet. You're allowed to enjoy your life. But every dollar that could have gone toward an appreciating asset and instead sat in a non-interest checking account is a dollar that got taxed by inflation with absolutely nothing to show for it. Step four, diversify against the tax specifically. Real estate has historically been one of the more reliable inflation hedges because as prices rise, property values and rents often rise with them. And if you have a fixed-rate mortgage, you're locking in your biggest expense while your income and the value of your asset both climb around it. That's not financial advice telling you to run out and buy a house tomorrow. That's just explaining why homeowners with fixed mortgages tend to feel less pain from this invisible tax than renters do, because their biggest monthly cost isn't moving while everything else is. Step five, And honestly, this might be the most important one. Start paying attention to your real return, not your nominal return. If your savings account pays you 2% interest and inflation is running at 3.5%, you are still losing 1.5% of your money's value every single year. Even though your account balance is technically going up. That number going up is an illusion of progress. Your bank statement can grow while your actual wealth shrinks, and that disconnect is exactly how this hidden tax hides so well. It hides inside the illusion of a bigger number. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I think it's the single most important sentence in this entire video. Your account balance going up does not automatically mean you're getting richer. If the number is going up slower than prices are going up, you're getting poorer. You just have a bigger, more confusing number in front of you telling you otherwise. That's the whole trick of this invisible tax. It doesn't take money directly out of your account. It takes value out of every dollar that's already sitting there and out of every future dollar you haven't earned yet. It's not a one-time hit. It's a permanent tax on time itself, on every day you leave money doing nothing. So here's what I actually want you to do after watching this. Not someday, not eventually, this week. Go look at how much of your money is sitting in cash, doing nothing, earning less than the current inflation rate. Not your emergency fund. That's supposed to be liquid and safe. That's a different conversation. I'm talking about the extra money that's just sitting there because moving it felt complicated or scary or like a problem for future you. That money is being taxed right now, silently, while you're watching this video. You don't need to become a Wall Street trader overnight. You don't need some complicated system. You need to understand one simple truth. Inflation doesn't ask your permission before it takes its cut. But you get to decide whether the rest of your money sits there and gets taxed right alongside it, or whether it goes to work and starts fighting back. Because here's the thing nobody tells you when you're starting out. Being financially responsible isn't just about not overspending. It's about understanding that doing nothing with your money isn't actually the cautious choice. It's the expensive one. The people who build real wealth aren't necessarily the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who understood this tax early and built their entire strategy around beating it instead of quietly accepting it. So the raise you got to work? Good. Keep earning more. That always helps. But stop assuming that a bigger number in your bank account automatically means a better life. Start asking whether your money is actually outrunning the one thing that's been quietly shrinking it your entire life. Because that tax isn't going anywhere. The only question left is whether you're going to keep paying in silence or finally start doing something about it.